Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus Manx sport, business and travel updates along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, an expert on Manx public law tells us why a secret ballot in tomorrow's vote of no confidence in Chief Minister Alfred Cannan is unlikely. Chief Constable Russ Foster provides an insight on the constabulary's recruitment challenges, and Manx Utilities tells us what the reaction's been like to a series of public consultations to its onshore wind farm proposals. That's all coming up in the next half hour. But first of all, with the update news headlines, here's Chanel Saku. Faster Mai.
Continuing to overspend on health will damage the island's reserves if not tackled, according to the Chief Minister. Alfred Cannan previously said Manx Care must come in on budget after forecasting a £16.8 million overspend. The healthcare provider has since announced a series of service cuts, including restrictions to elective surgery and out-of-hours social work. The Ben Macree is due to arrive in Scotland later this week, with a view to being chartered by ferry operator Calmac. The vessel will conduct berthing trials on the route linking the Isle of Arran and Troon. It's been used as a backup ship by the steam packet company since the Manxman came into service last year. And electricity generated by an onshore wind farm in the south of the island would benefit everyone, but the visual impact would be a negative for those in the area. That's from the Chief Executive Officer of Manx Utilities following a series of public meetings. In international news, the cap on bus fares in England will go up by 50% from £2 to £3 in Wednesday's budget. Sir Keir Starmer also defended expected tax rises. Eric Ten Hag's been sacked as Manchester United manager following a poor start to the season. Ruud van Nistelrooy is temporarily in charge of the club. The Dutchman won 2 trophies during his 2.5 years at Old Trafford. And Netflix is launching a new feature to allow subscribers to share their favourite moments for films and TV shows. It says Moments aims at encouraging conversations about the latest releases. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
More Dixon, keeping you on top of the news and the numbers. Call More Dixon on 66 2020.
Let's keep on top of the weather. Generally cloudy with the risk of the odd spot of rain or drizzle at times this evening and tonight. Light westerly winds, temperatures down to 10 Celsius. Remaining mainly cloudy but dry tomorrow, possibly with some brightness breaking through at times. Light to moderate west or northwest winds, temperatures of 14 Celsius at best. Dry but cloudy on Wednesday as the light westerly wind backs to the southwest. Top temperature again around 14 Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summerhill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts. Now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance, a choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Direct cremation is just that, an affordable and simple cremation without all the costs associated with a funeral service. Find out more by visiting directcremation.im or phone Direct Cremations on 478 422.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
A secret ballot for tomorrow's motion of no confidence in the Chief Minister would be unlikely. That's according to expert on Manx public law, Professor Peter Edge. Members of the House of Keys will decide whether they think Alf Cannan is fit for the job. But after rumours some members wanted to vote in secret, Professor Edge says it would be unusual.
Secret ballots used to be part of the Manx constitutional system. The most prominent example, I think, is the appointment of members of the Legislative Council. They are appointed by the Keys, and up until quite recently, that was by secret ballot. And that may have been one of the reasons that at some points in the early 2000s, it would take a vast number of votes to fill a vacancy, because people were able to manage their relationships with possible future MLCs by assuring them of their support and then not delivering. So you find a number of explicit references in debates about, I would like to thank the 13 people who voted for me as well as the 15 who said they would. So the thing about the secret ballot and what was occasionally favoured by people was it's a way of handling ongoing relationships rather than have them disrupted by you're not voting for somebody. The reason why they moved out of popularity for the MLCs, and I think actually it's applicable to this vote, is in a representative democracy, we should know how our representatives vote. So there really shouldn't be secret votes by MHKs on constitutional matters such as the confidence or otherwise in the Chief Minister. So I think it would be quite unusual to take that step backwards into a secret ballot. My understanding is that the current standing orders of the House of Keys require an open ballot. They can be suspended, but that in itself would require a special majority of 16 MHKs. So that's a lot of MHKs would need to want to take this secret. And I think that in itself would be interesting because obviously that vote would be open. Let us say that 9 MHKs voted for it to be a secret ballot, and then 9 people voted against the Chief Minister. There would be no definite way of connecting those two, but I would have thought there'd be a fair chance the Chief Minister would join the dots. So I don't think it's desirable, and I think it's probably quite unlikely.
Meanwhile, the Chief Minister's warning if healthcare spending continues on its current trajectory, it will damage the island's reserves. Having previously said Manx Care must come in on budget despite forecasting an overspend, Alfred Cannan, who's been acting as Health Minister for the last fortnight following the resignation of Laurie Hooper, says there's work to be done.
It will take a collective drive to resolve some of this. There is absolutely a role for Tynwald in this. There's a role for the DHSC, the Minister, and there's an absolute role for Manx Care. I think we should all need to come together. Some of these factions need to come together now. We need to understand quickly where those issues are, and we need to drive to resolution so that Manx Care as an organisation can move forward together, and Tynwald can move forward with some clarity about the funding position and also the mandate position in terms of what we're expecting from Manx Care in terms of delivery. I know that some of this over-expenditure has been going on for years in different levels and different places within the healthcare system. But the fundamental point is after a 10%, effectively a 2 pence, but 10% rise in income tax last year, right, an extra £43 million, a condition promise that they were going to stay within budget, to smash that by £16 million, their forecast is £16 million, is going to cause us real problems. You know, effectively this compound overspend is just being built in more and more into future budgets, and the cost of delivery of healthcare in the current trajectory without any changes will damage our reserves in a serious way, and we need to address it, Phil, and we've got to be responsible. And one of the reasons why I've had to be so forceful about this is because I have an absolute level of responsibility to you, to the public, to make sure that people understand that there is a potential problem if we do not get the solutions. And I hope that by being bold enough to stand up and identify that, despite all the trauma that's coming with it, we can actually move ourselves into a better position.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Manx Utilities' public consultation roadshow into proposals for a wind farm at Eriestane in the south of the island concluded in Ramsey last night. The next phase of the multi-million-pound project will be a detailed examination of the views and comments offered at the 8 events held around the island last week. Manx Radio went along to the first of Ramsey's 2 meetings at the former courthouse building on Friday. Business was brisk, with strongly held views offered both for and against the Caervai wind farm project. Manx Utilities Chief Executive Officer Phil King was at the event and told Simon Richardson he was happy with the level of engagement from the public.
We're absolutely delighted with the feedback we've had, so attendance has been brilliant. I think the level of interaction, the really insightful questions that have been posed have been excellent, so we're pleased with the level of engagement. We're only just halfway through, haven't analysed the feedback yet. There's a real mix across the spectrum of very pro, really like the idea to major concerns. So we get to analyse all that and feed that through into the planning process later on.
Now, we're here in Ramsey. I guess the views may be slightly different in the south of the island, where these things are going to be very visible. Here, they're not so. Does that enter people's thoughts, do you think?
I think it has to. Obviously, if this produces around a quarter of the electricity for the Isle of Man, everybody on the Isle of Man will benefit. But the downside in terms of location, there's visible aspects, there's ecological aspects, there's transport and construction aspects, and if you live in that locality, there's bound to be more of an impact. So yes, it's natural that we're going to get a difference in views from different parts of the island.
Is it possible, the people here may think that in the future, if this is successful with the southern project, the population of the island will rise, the demand for electricity will rise, that you'll be looking maybe in other sites on the island to develop similar wind farms?
That's entirely possible. This project is a sensible size for the demand at the moment, and the way it will work with all the existing assets. So we won't prematurely strand those assets or have to retire them early. But yes, as the demand increases in future, if indeed it does, then we can look at other options. And indeed, this is compatible with the connection to an offshore wind farm as well. Both would work together. We'd probably do this one first and then later on connect to an offshore wind farm.
You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. Chief Constable Russ Foster says good progress is being made in terms of police recruitment. It comes after starting pay for officers was increased in July. Currently, the force is operating with 24 fewer officers than it has budgeted. But Russ Foster says while their recent recruitment campaign's been a success, there are still roadblocks when trying to hire people from the UK.
We are 24 officers at the last count under our funded strength. However, my organisational development team have been working tirelessly in terms of trying to secure individuals to be recruited to the Isle of Man, both locally but also across the water as well. Some of the issues that have been raised is around the living, the starting pay for police constables. They were starting on circa £28,500 a year, which wasn't comparable to other emergency services or other law enforcement agencies. So working with the Department of Home Affairs, there was an agreement whereby we would uplift the pay to circa 34,690, and we have attracted an increased number of potential candidates. We've recently run the selection process, and out of that there were 40 applicants ultimately who got through to the assessment centre stage. We've distilled down 20 applicants. We've got another 2 who have been interviewed, potential transferees. So that's certainly 22 towards that 24 gap that we've got at the moment. So real positive news. Clearly those individuals have got to get through the training, which commences in earnest in January. Hopefully they will be out on patrol together with their tutor constable in readiness for TT.
How easy is it for police officers from across or elsewhere to adapt to the Isle of Man?
Albeit there's differences in legislation over here, they are very, very similar. So we do a conversion course. In terms of the challenges, what we've got here is quite a finite resource, but we do have to cover the whole raft of different disciplines within policing. And over in the UK, you will have an individual who are very much focused on a particular discipline, i.e. on policing. We've not got this here. We've got our police officers who need to be multi-hatting. They need to be trained in a number of different disciplines. So there's greater variety, there's greater expectations. And unfortunately, there has been some changes in terms of pension schemes. And where once we were attractive to police officers over in the UK, due to those changes, it's not a one-for-one swap, and there is a deficiency in terms of the pension scheme. So police officers joining us will have to work longer for less, so it's no longer that attractive, to be fair. So there's a real focus around trying to secure recruits here on the island.
Police Chief Constable Russ Foster talking on today's Man in Line. Moving on to business news now, the Ben Macree is due to arrive in Scotland later this week with a view to being chartered by ferry operator Calmac. The vessel will conduct berthing trials on the route linking the Isle of Arran and Troon. A new study from the Isle of Man Gambling Supervision Commission show licensees in the region blocked almost 3,000 underage players in 2023, with all operators surveyed happy with the effectiveness of their existing measures to halt underage gambling. The online Responsible Gambling Survey report features responses from 33 out of 35 total Isle of Man licensees. It covers the effectiveness of the responsible gambling controls currently in place across operators' websites. The data was collated for the period January the 1st to December 31st, 2023. Onto the markets, UK and European closed higher, gaining ground through the afternoon as investors reviewed the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. The yen hit 3-month lows as Japan's ruling coalition's election loss raises political and monetary policy uncertainty, while the US dollar headed for its biggest monthly gain since April 2022. US crude oil sold off steeply, putting the benchmark on pace for its worst day in more than 2 years after Iranian energy facilities were not damaged during an Israeli attack over the weekend. And gold's record rally took a breather as US Treasury yields and dollar gained the upper hand while investors awaited a series of US economic data due this week. On to the markets at the close, the FTSE 100 was at 8285, that's up 0.45%. The Dow Jones is at 42,401, up 0.68%. The Nasdaq 18,605, that's up 0.47%. Exchange rates, the pound against the dollar 1.298 and against the euro 1.200. In commodities, gold's at $2,743 down 0.11%. And Brent is at $71.53 which is down 5.35%.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
Oh.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
An application for 18 houses in the Crosby Meadows estate's been rejected by the Planning Committee. It was recommended for approval at today's meeting, but a number of reasons were given by the board. Local Democracy reporter Emma Draper has more details.
Concerns were raised by Chair Rob Callister about overdevelopment of the fields, as well as the lack of affordable housing and sewage. The applicant had agreed to pay £20,000 in lieu of not having a full 25% of affordable housing allocated in the estate, whilst a condition would have been added to pause occupancy until the sewage works in the Crosby are completed. The 18 houses would have been in addition to the properties already on the estate. Whilst committee member Peter Whiteway said the gardens shown on the map didn't look in line with affordable housing regulations, which states they must be 7 metres. Representative for the applicant Mark Pearce said they wouldn't be any shorter than 8 metres. Mr Pearce also said a bin store would be created and they accepted the sewage condition instead of installing a temporary measure. The vote was split by 4 votes to 2 against the application and it was refused. But this can be appealed. Reasons for refusal were given as some houses had a close proximity, a negative look on the development with affordable houses next to each other, and the sewage pipes falling outside the site boundary.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, everything is looking good this evening in terms of air and ferry. The steam packet services are all reported as on time, as to flights in and out of Ronaldsway. In terms of the roads, in Douglas, Summerhill is closed from its junction with the promenade to Strathallan Road, while a gas main is being replaced. There are diversions in position.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
The Great North Air Ambulance Service has been called to the Isle of Man 62 times in 2.5 years. GNAS can provide patients with advanced levels of pre-hospital care, including anaesthesia, blood transfusions and surgery. It first started including the Isle of Man in its catchment area back in March 2022. Amanda and Cheryl work for the charity and have been telling Amy Griffiths more about it.
So we provide a critical care team to come and rescue anybody and tend to anybody who needs our help at the time that need it. So we are basically bringing the emergency room to the scene of an accident or incident.
Talking about here on the Isle of Man, how do you work with the control room here? How does that system work?
We are looking at potentially ways to improve it a little bit more, early stages at the moment, but we are still relatively new over here, so it's 2.5 years now for us, and we've done 62 call-outs, in that 2.5 years. So it has proved to be very successful, very much needed. And obviously, as things go on, technology improves. Also, other things need to be changed slightly to adapt.
So clearly, 62 call-outs in 2.5 years, actually for a population of 85,000, sounds quite high. So as you say, proving to be something that is definitely a service that's needed here on the island.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. We just worked out that it was about 25-ish call-outs a year. So without that, obviously, those 62 people wouldn't have survived. I mean, we were seeing a lady this morning, actually, and she said to me, someone came out to my brother in April, she said, and he wouldn't be here today if you guys hadn't rescued him. So that was lovely to meet that lady this morning, just as we were doing a talk in a business. So yeah.
I was about to ask you why the air ambulance is so important to you, but I think that kind of summarises it, doesn't
100%, it? 100%. Every time I'm at head office and every time I hear the helicopter just start to spin, I get goosebumps. And you know it's someone's worst day, but you know that we're there, and it just fills you with pride.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Time for sport now. Faster my Darren Timson.
Good evening. Starting with FC Isle of Man. Ravens boss Paul Jones has praised his side's mental resilience after the Manx team needed 2 second-half goals from Luke Booth to come from behind against Chatterton on Saturday. The win means that FC Isle of Man have recorded their 3rd win in a row, and Jones believes the success is down to the squad fighting until the final minute of the game.
You know, we're willing to do whatever it takes to get over the line, and there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of belief in each other. You know, Luke's obviously Boothie's scored 4 goals in the last couple of games, and you know, he's repaying the faith that we all have in him, and that's fantastic. But so a lot of the other lads, and you know, it's great to see that it's not just the established heads that have played 3 or 4 years at this level. It's also the new lads who've come in this season, or the young lads that we're giving opportunities to, that are, you know, getting us over the line. We can't let our foot off the gas at all. We need to keep pushing hard, and obviously it's easier to go home after a long day away from the island with 3 points, so we'll take it and we'll move on to the next Saturday.
Ravens boss Paul Jones. Moving on, Isle of Man racer Joe Yeardsley has announced he'll be competing for Scott Racing Motorcycle Limited in 2025. The move comes after the Manxman made his debut at the TT this year, where he recorded the highest finish of 8 in the opening Super Twin race. Yeardsley is set to race on the Asprilla Super Twin next year. The news comes after Connor Cummins announced he was switching teams to race with Burrows Engineering RK Racing in 2025 as well. In local sport, Ayr maintained their position at the summit of the Canada Life Premier League as they beat St Mary's 4-2, while Peel eats past Foxdale to stay 3 points behind. At the other end of the table, Onken demolished Moran 6-2 to move out of the relegation zone, whilst Moran stay bottom with no points after 9 games. In the Arden and Druggan second division, Braddon hit 10 past Michael United to move top of the table ahead of Douglas Old Boys. In hockey, Battersea remained top of the mixed Division 1, while the Isle of Man under-18s team beat Preston Boys 5-1 in the England Hockey Boys under-18 Tier 2 Knockout Championships. And in rugby, Douglas were undone by Burnage 42-27 in the Regional Northwest to leave the side 9th after 7 games.
It's hoped the discovery of a new species of ant on the island will help to reveal more about how insects live together here. The Lasius platithorax was found at the Ballot Nature Reserve and has been verified as a new species with no previous record in the island, but it was also found to have a symbiotic partnership with another insect, a woodlouse. Sue Harvey discovered the ant and has been telling Amy Griffiths more.
I was very lucky to get permission to go and look on the new Ballot Nature Reserve. But I was very interested in the site because it's one of the few sites on the island that has limestone in it, so potential for new species. It's a different habitat, can be very different. So just turned over a tree trunk and, saw a nest of ants there and collected a few of them up and took them home. And then the fun starts because I have to preserve them on a little piece of paper, which has got a little pin through it, which is a very, very fiddly job, can be very frustrating. And then I get my microscope out and I work through some keys that I've been given and come up with an answer. And the sort of final piece in the puzzle was a slightly different profile to the face, and the upper lip, the clypes, was very sparse with hair, so you could actually see the body shining through that, unlike the similar species that has very dense hair. Having done that, I take lots of photos, try and get the light right, and I send those photos off to an ant expert who then decides whether I'm correct or not.
With the identification of this ant, that's not the only exciting thing about it, is there? Because there's also a woodlouse that lives over here on the island that it seems to work in partnership with, doesn't it, and have this symbiotic relationship. So can you tell me a little bit more about that as well?
So the woodlice is a particularly attractive woodlice. I mean, I know as soon as I mention woodlice, everyone is like, oh no, I've got plenty in my house you can have. But this is a small one. It's very, very flat. It's white and it's got very big antennae, and it is only ever found in ants' nests. I've seen it many times in the UK in ants' nests there. And the only recent records have been from the Ballot Nature Reserve. I think the ants provide a lot of protection for this woodlouse. Ants are quite aggressive, but the ants have learnt to live with this woodlouse. I think the woodlouse helps keep the ants' nest clean for the ants, and the ants provide protection for the woodlouse from other predators eating him.
That's it for Update, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thank you, newsreader Chanel Sakou. And the stories you've heard on this programme and much more Manx news, plus interviews and podcasts, and the web's biggest source of Manx videos are all at manxradio.com and via the free Manx Radio app. So just like Manx Radio on Facebook, follow us on X and subscribe to the Manx Radio YouTube channel. And if you have a comment on the news agenda or a story you think we should be covering, or you just want to say hello from near or far, email update@manxradio.com. And thank you to our podcast audience for making Update the Isle of Man's most subscribed to news podcast. If you know someone who would enjoy one, then get them to follow Update as a podcast via Apple, Google, Smart Speaker, Spotify, or the TuneIn app. That's it from me. See you again soon.
Sundown, the show where virtually anything can happen. In our virtual lounge, there's virtually everything you need to round off your Sunday. Only you, me and the music are real and always live. Every Sunday night from 9 here on your Manx Radio.
The Treasury Minister's next on Man in Line. Yes, we get it. The government's told us plain and simple, times are tough. So what's the state of the NI fund? And can we pay for health and care services? The UK budget looms large in our future too. Can we only look forward to tax rises, constrained budgets and not much hope of relief? What is the financial future for the Isle of Man and the public services that rely on it? What do you think? Talk to Alex Allenson, MHK, this Thursday at midday on smart devices, on air, online, on Manx Radio.